With your permission, I'll be starting to present an overview of my final project focused on the CLIL context, and in particular, I'll be referring to the challenges and confidence that future teachers will have or have. So the need of this study is well justified throughout the dissertation. As an effect of globalization, there was a huge interest in language learning, in multilingualisms. So as a result, there was different approaches emerge in order to cope with this needs, and one of the new methodologies was CLIL learning, content language integrated learning, and this was also well established in the Spanish educational system, but as is a new concept, it's important to analyze from different perspectives the challenges involved in implementing this approach. So for this reason, I have listed here the main objectives of my study. Firstly, the main aim was to identify the difficulties that the students and recent graduates from the Master in Secondary Teaching may have, and secondly, to analyze the teacher's confidence before confronting an entire class in English. In order to analyze and to obtain the results of these research questions, I investigated the previous research on this area. Firstly, I was trying to see how the foreign language learning, the traditional approaches, differ from the CLIL approach, as traditional approaches were more focused in one element in the language itself, such as grammar, vocabulary, or listening. However, CLIL learning tends to focus on four main areas at the same time: content, language, cognition, and culture. And this differs a lot from the previous methodologies. And among the benefits, there are studies that show that this boosts risk-taking from students, grammar awareness, and autonomous learning. In the context of Spain, there is training offer to those teachers in service that are willing to teach using this approach. But as our education is decentralized across the different communities, there are several models. And those vary from immersion programs in English-speaking countries, teaching training programs focus on service, training, and materials design, or in just language learning itself. And in the recent years, we can see that many universities introduce CLIL as a module, or as we have in this master's in Camilo José Cela, and there is also a master's qualification in the University of Barcelona. After analyzing the training, the study also focused on the needs that teacher reported in previous studies, and those were regarded as the instruction, as it wasn't sufficient to cope with the needs, with time concerns, as this approach involves more time-consuming preparation, and it was also reported by some studies that language assistance will provide significant meaningful support for those teachers, as they can focus more in the language and teachers can focus on the content. As we have the last element here, the challenges covered in the literature review were related to the lack of resources that in-service teachers indicated, but the major drawback here was related to the linguistic competence of teachers, as it was reflected in Olivares Leiva and Pena in 2012 research. Taking all the previous studies into account, we can now move into the methodology. So in order to gather data, I use a mixed research methods, a quantitative and qualitative one, as I think those combined will provide meaningful and complementary analysis. By means of instrumentation, by means of an online questionnaire, I requested information through open and closed questions, and the data was collected through online platforms and social media, and 47 participants took part in this study. The ages of the participants range from 22 to 29 years old, and they came from different communities across Spain. So, having covered the methodology, I would like to then focus on having analyzed the methodology. I will now continue with the results. First of all, it's important to know from what level are we starting from. This was the first question in my study, and remarkably the majority show from an advanced C1 to B2 level, which can be considered highly positive, especially because 39.1 reported a C1. However, it is surprising to see that just the 4.3% of the respondents had proficient level. Those levels are in line with previous studies in which participants vary from a B1 to a C1. In terms of the challenges that participants see in this approach, we can see that the linguistic competence is regarded as the most problematic, followed by the creation of materials, which can also be related to the language. and the time to plan the lessons and evaluation was considered less problematic. This can be also a reason because these students are not in-service teachers, so they don't probably know what implications are behind evaluation and time to plan the lessons. And in contrast to the challenges, we can see that participants show a high level of confidence. 42% reported to be comfortable about teaching in class entirely in English, and 21.3% extremely comfortable. 23% neither shown to be neither comfortable nor uncomfortable, and only an 8.5 showed to be anxious, and 4.3 showed to be extremely anxious. This shows that participants had a high level of confidence, so they might be able to confront a class entirely in English. Having said that, the major conclusions that can be drawn are that linguistic competence is the major challenge. Although there reported high levels of confidence, which differs from previous studies, this can be here we can assume that the higher the level is, the greater the mastery in every area is. So in order to have reliable teachers, it will be important to boost and to promote a higher level to be able to teach confidently in English. This shows a quite similar line with previous research, but it provides an insight into the different an insight into the recent teachers. Therefore, there is a concern to have more training and in order to ensure best practices among the new teachers. And having said that, we need to provide, having analyzed all the remarkable features gathered from this study, we can move forward and talk about future perspective. There is a need, after the concerns raised, to have new qualifications across the communities in Spain in order to have a mutual accreditation. And decision-making bodies are responsible to implement this training in order to cope with teacher needs and challenges. And it will be highly positive to analyze the needs of a large sample of in-service teachers who are using this approach and to analyze their challenges. So now I'm at your disposal, and I'll be happy to answer any query that may arise from this presentation. Thank you for listening.